So yeah, before we proceed, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining the BIGGFAM Discord and having a conversation with our brand new CEO of BIGG Digital Assets. How's your first couple months at the helm? Are you getting adjusted? How's the adjustment period been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have joined Big if I didn't see huge opportunities for the three companies to work together. I've known Big since before I started DMG. So we're going back probably 7 or 8 years. I met Lance and Sean, the two founders, as they were building. This was before I took any interest in blockchain and Bitcoin. And I saw what they were doing and I thought, this is really cool. And then time went on. I built DMG. I actually acquired a company called Blockseer out of Silicon Valley that was very similar technology to Blockchain Intelligence Group. We ended up turning that software into a pool that we then licensed to companies like Marathon, which is the biggest miner in North America. I think the biggest public miner that there is. So I am very familiar with Blockchain Intelligence Group. I think that this, and I think we'll probably get into that, is how they're monetizing what they have. I think it needs a little bit of rethinking. In terms of Netcoins, this is my first exchange. Obviously, as CEO of DMG, we used exchanges. We used OTC desks to, Bitcoin mining, as you guys know, is very expensive and requires a lot of ongoing liquidation of what you mine in order to pay your bills. So I am familiar on the customer side, but I wasn't as familiar on the operating side. But as soon as I met Fraser, who manages the Netcoins operations, I became really comfortable. This is a guy that runs a tight ship. It was not my full intention of being an exchange. I find that the business, by the way, I'm very transparent. I speak how it is. So I apologize in advance, but the exchange business is a boring business. We turn people's fiat into crypto. We turn people's crypto into crypto, and we turn crypto back into fiat. It's not that exciting. But there's opportunities to make it exciting. And there's opportunities to create differentiating products and services that make Netcoins a more attractive offer than a Coinbase, because they basically offer the same thing. There's a small difference in fees. There's a small difference in KYC. There's little differences, but it's like banks. Bank of Montreal is pretty much the same as Royal Bank. It's how do they differentiate themselves when you're selling and providing a service that is pretty much identical to others in the same space. And bringing Terra Zero in is a way to energize that. We work with some of the biggest brands in the world. Fidelity International, PwC is our client. In fact, Fraser was a past PwC guy, which helped me get a lot more comfortable with his organizational skills. But yeah, he runs a great ship. Netcoins is great because when crypto is doing well, it's cash flow positive like it is right now. It's making money. But as I said before, it is a bit boring, and we're going to change that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for the intro. I did want to digress a little bit to the beginning because I think it's important. People, I love your hardware. I think I told you that before. Anyways, I digress myself. Digress back to the beginning on when you met Sean and Dan. What kind of executive experiences did you have in the past prior to your DMG days that leveraged you back then to help you into the DMG blockchain and what you ended up doing with that?
Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never had a job. And I mean, obviously I have a job.
You do what you love. It's not a job, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I get excited about these things, but I've had successes, I've had failures. I'm not going to pretend I haven't. But back I went to boarding school, and in boarding school, you had to make your own way, and so just from an early age as a teenager, I had small businesses on the side to provide whatever cash I needed, and that morphed into different businesses. I owned half of the very first Rogers Cantel store in Canada back in 2000. This is when consumers were just starting to look at buying. Sorry, this is in 1993, when consumers were just starting to use cell phones. Prior to that, it was all just businesses and government, and they were large briefcases and regular phones. So we actually opened up the very first retail store in a place called Guildford Town Center, which is a suburb of Vancouver. And I sold it, which was a mistake in hindsight. But I've had lots of other businesses, and sort of, I had a business in Las Vegas. We had billboards in Las Vegas. That was a company called Outdoor Impressions, did very well. Our clients were actually Canadian online casinos. Now, this was before the Kyle bill, which was the Wild West of online gambling. So we made lots of money, but eventually I got pushed out of Las Vegas because at the time online gambling was illegal, especially in Las Vegas, and we were advertising it as you go to the airport from your hotel casino. That turned into Digital Youth Network, and I'm pretty proud of this company. So drawing from my days in the mobile phone business, Digital Youth at the time was, it was prior to Facebook, but essentially what it was it was a way to get kids using cell phones. Kids weren't using cell phones in 2001, 2002. It was their parents using cell phones. And, we didn't have smartphones at the time. They were just your regular Nokias or Motorola's or Sony Ericsson's or whatever it was. And I was very friendly with the CEO of Universal Canada at the time, which was a guy by the name of Randy Lennox. And he was kind of a mentor to me. And he said, I want to get people using digital music. They're all these people are ripping off our music, and I need to get people actually paying for it. And Rogers' subsidiary, which was Fido at the time, was looking to find a way to get young people using cell phones. And so we created Digital Youth. And what Digital Youth was, we had a deal done with the Surrey School Board and the Toronto School Board. These were the largest school boards in Canada. And we allowed them to give away a free phone to all of their high school students with their parents' permission. Their parents had to sign off on it. What's amazing is that cell phones were actually banned in the Toronto School District at the time, and yet they promoted Digital Youth in their report cards. But the whole point was to give kids a free phone that could then call Kids Helpline at any time, free of charge. The schools had the ability to text message in the event of emergencies. And the whole system was essentially subsidized by music industry selling ringtones and other things to those kids and their phones. The wireless network, which became Rogers, it was Fido at the time, wanted kids because they'd already saturated the adult market. How do you keep growing if every adult had a phone? You needed to go after the kids. And so we got kids using cell phones, downloading ringtones, licensed ringtones, downloading snippets of songs. We didn't have the technology at the time to do the full songs. And so that was Digital Youth. And then I moved on and I created a company called That Mobile Company. The reason I called it That Mobile Company was we were doing a lot of text message advertising at Digital Youth. We'd have Mars was a client, for example, and we would promote candy bars or whatever it was. And these were at the very early stages of mobile marketing, which was just text messages. It was crazy. But a lot of brands were interested in that. And when I wanted to start a new company and create a company that only did mobile marketing, I couldn't think of a name. And I just realized everybody at all the ad agencies just say, what's the name of That Mobile Company? And I thought, you know what? We're going to call it That Mobile Company. And our biggest client was Glentel, which owned Wireless Wave and T-Booth. I think they ended up with about 1,800 stores by the time they sold to Bell. And I was very friendly with the Skidmore family that owned it. And so they were big supporters of That Mobile Company. And when you bought a phone, you would get thank yous from Wireless Wave and et cetera. And then, moving sort of forward along, it was when I was sharing an office with a securities lawyer who happened to be the securities lawyer for Blockchain Intelligence Group. And they were a couple of guys, brilliant engineer, and they had this cool blockchain analytics technology, but they didn't know what to do with it. And they didn't know how to raise capital for it. This was a small little private company. And so I was asked, can you help them? And I think this is something that could be quite big. And so we did. And so I reached out to someone I'd been told to contact in Japan. I said, this is the technology, this is what it is. And they put up the first money for Blockchain Intelligence Group and ended up selling Blockchain Intelligence Group into the Japanese market. And then that became digital DMG spawned from the same Japanese group was we want to mine Bitcoin in North America. Can you build a Bitcoin mining company? And so we built DMG and the rest is history.
Perfect. So moving into DMG, you were able to raise over 100 million, I think $135 million total. You were able to raise. How did I know a part of it was from the Japanese sector of things that you just mentioned? How did you go about what strategies did you take on to raise that additional 100 million?
The markets are crazy, and the markets are even crazier when it's crypto. And what I've learned over the last 7 or 8 years is crypto is very cyclical. And there's different parts of the crypto economy that require different amounts of capital investment. Mining is extremely capital intensive. And so you need to raise a ridiculous amount of money because you need to replace the hardware. Every time the halving comes out, the new chips come out, you need to be efficient, and therefore you need to replace your hardware. So that's a difficult business. But if you time it correctly, and it's very profitable for about a year and a half after the halving, it's extremely profitable. You can obviously get your share price going and people want to invest because it's very profitable. The problem, as I said, is that it is very capital intensive. In terms of how we got there, DMG was always a pretty significant player in the mining space. But what we did that I think was quite unique was back in October of 2020, we were all basically in COVID lockdowns. Our mine was fine. We only had 2 employees that needed to run the whole 30,000 square feet because we had software that managed everything. But I started thinking to myself, people, and it was just, we were now in a lull and it was just starting to come back a little bit. And there was a lot of talk with the US regulators whining and complaining about things like they've done many times before. And I realized if we could have a North American group of mining companies that we could put together in an alliance, we could go to the government and we could say, now listen, something unique about mining is that the miners have the ability to choose transactions in which to put into a block to then process, and it becomes part of the blockchain. What's unique about this is taking our software, which was Blockseer, which is exactly the same as Blockchain Intelligence Group software, we can kick out transactions that are associated with a particular wallet. So what we did was I spoke to the CEO of Marathon, a guy by the name of Merrick, and he spoke to Michael Saylor and others, and they formed Digital Currency Miners of North America and talked to the government about this. And Marathon decided they wanted to be the lead on this, and they launched this pool software that the miners connected to that basically had the capability to censor certain transactions. Well, guess what? The community hated it because as much as we don't like nefarious activity, censorship goes against everything that we stand for in the crypto community. And so ultimately, it wasn't a great idea at the time, but what it did was it formed this relationship between DMG and Marathon and Argo, which was the big one on the London Stock Exchange. And that ended up propelling DMG into a larger company than it really should have been at the time. Now, obviously, it's still a great company. But that gained us massive amounts of notoriety. And with notoriety, people want to be part of that. And that's something that I'm doing here at BIGG. BIGG is too quiet. BIGG is a company that has a lot of shareholders, and a lot of them are probably board stiff. It needs excitement. And, we don't invest in a crypto company because it's going to give us an annualized return of 4% per year. We invest in it because it's wild and crazy, and it's doing something different than was ever done before. And that's where Terra Zero comes in. It creates that use cases for crypto. It creates the ability for Netcoins to be in a new channel. I got to be careful with some of the things that I want to say because I get very excited about what we're doing. But obviously, I can't say things that are not yet materially released.
And nor do we want to put you in that position either.
Thank you. So if I start going off, to just
Yeah,
be quiet.
I'll
The
cut you
general
off.
point here, the general point here is that DMG did deals with much larger companies to gain notoriety, and we're doing the same thing at TerraZero and BIGG.
Amazing. So fast forwarding from your young executive roles to taking on a big project at DMG, raising a ton of money, you ended up selling it, and you came out very prosperous. And you weren't in your 20s anymore, mid 30s anymore, and it was interesting to me that A, you took the job here when you could have just packed it in, and B, I've noticed that you took it mostly in stock and not in pay, in salary, I would say, which tells me as a holder in the company that you do really want the stock to go up and you are in it for the long run. So it's a kind of a two-part question here. The first question is, you could have packed it in, you could have went to the Bahamas, you could have set up shop there and just, kicked your feet up. But instead, you took on this role, and not only that, but you took it in such a way that you are really putting a lot of eggs on your basket for it to do well. What is your thought process in that?
Okay, so DMG, we went through some tough times at DMG, and I was the CEO from the inception right through to when I left, and Sheldon, who was my original co-founder, took over. He is an expert at mining. I was not necessarily an expert at mining. I'm more of a consumer business development kind of person. So he's well suited for that role. And it does weigh on you after a while, being in a very volatile market. DMG went from $2 to, at one point we were 6 cents, and then right back up to $5, trading 30 million shares a day. We were the highest and most liquid stock outside of Hive on the TSX Venture for 2020, and part of 2020, half of 2021. So it's very volatile, and it does wear on you, which is one of the reasons why a CEO would change every 5 years in this type of space, because it does take a toll. Yes, obviously I came off a huge success with DMG. I left it with $100 million in the treasury. It is one of the most well-known miners in the world. It has great relationships with the primary manufacturer in China, which is Bitmain. In fact, we built Bitmain's facility in Texas as part of a joint venture. So we were very well connected. The market didn't see it until the end, and that's why obviously it was able to raise so much money and do very well. But I started TerraZero because when I was thinking about leaving DMG, and I wanted to make sure I had the right person to leave it with, and that was Sheldon. I'd heard about, and everybody was talking about NFTs, and there's always something that drives the cyclical market, and we're seeing it right now. It's happening again right now. When I first started DMG, it was all about ICOs. Everybody was doing ICOs. It was a new way of raising money. Well, you know what? And it always coincides within 6 months of a halving when these new things happen. And it created a lot of excitement, but also a lot of scams and a lot of disasters. And then that drags down the whole
NFTs.
Yeah. So then it became NFTs was the next cycle, which was in 2020 and 2021. And then people realized, well, what am I going to do with an NFT? It's a cool idea. It's a cool technology. And of course, that became the next impetus for collapsing markets, which we've just been through. The next catalyst that we're seeing right now as ETFs is the ability for everybody in the world to not even have a wallet, but be exposed to crypto and almost on a one-to-one basis. And what's important about that shows so much upside to what we all do here, what we're all interested in, is 3% of the world's population has ever had a crypto wallet. 3%. Now we're opening it up to 100% of people can call their broker, say, I want to buy into this ETF where I have exposure to crypto's rise and fall, Bitcoin's rise and fall. We've now opened up the ability to buy crypto to everyone on the planet, which is why it's such a monumental thing that everybody is talking about. But that will be the impetus, and that will be the catalyst for what drives Bitcoin, especially massively higher, which I anticipate early this year, or early next year. But where was I going with this? The ETF.
And basically, that is
Yes,
cyclical. That it's
yeah.
cyclical, and we're seeing that now. And as a result, you believe that uh, basically the industry as a whole will move up quite a
It's
bit,
good.
and
Yeah,
then you have the whole halving after.
yeah. What's key
Um,
about this? What's key about this? Halving's already starting to get priced in. A lot of the miners are going to go bankrupt in around May or June. Because if their power cost is too high, I obviously come from this world. Only the biggest usually survive in the mining business after a halving. You need to have the relationships with the manufacturers, which are few and far between of the actual rigs. You need to have the proper amount of power and the proper price of power. And then, because the reward is going to be halved, which means that the supply is halved. Remember that most of the crypto that comes on the market as a sell is from miners paying their bills. And so when you have a deflationary product, and I'm only talking about Bitcoin here, when you have a deflationary product, which is Bitcoin, in other words, there are only 21 million that can ever exist. And you have more people wanting to buy those limited number of Bitcoin, then the price will inherently increase. So you will open this up to ETFs where you now, 30 times the number of people that could invest in Bitcoin are now able to invest in Bitcoin. The demand for Bitcoin goes way up. The supply goes way down because the miners are making half as much as they were before. It's pretty obvious. This is economics 101 of what's probably going to happen. Now, obviously, all the altcoins sort of follow in the same sort of patterns as Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is in my opinion, will always be the GOAT. And it really is the reason I got involved in this business was for Bitcoin. But yeah, it's pretty amazing to have a product or a currency that is deflationary by its very nature, in the sense that there is always going to be less printed every 4 years than there was printed the previous 4 years.
Absolutely, and it's mind-boggling. You said it before. Only 3% of people in the world own it. So as less supply occurs and ETFs open up, more people are going to get into it, and supply and demand, right? Where there's low supply and a lot of demand of something, price of it goes up.
Yeah.
So we pray for that, and we pray as a result of that, big digital asset stock will go up as well, right?
Well, I mean, it's directly related. So you take a company like Netcoins. So, like I said at the beginning, Netcoins is not the most exciting business in the world, but it is a great cash business in the sense that right now Netcoins is profitable. And it's profitable because it's trading higher volumes and the price of each trade is higher because the price of Bitcoin is higher. So, as more people are onboarded into this ecosystem, so yes, they're not necessarily going to be using Netcoins on day one when they can invest in an ETF, but they will slowly start learning about Bitcoin and crypto, and they will soon become comfortable with opening their own exchange and custodying their own coins and trading their own coins. So Netcoins will only benefit from increased trading activity or increased price, both of which we're seeing right now. Blockchain Intelligence Group will benefit because those analytic tools are required by ETFs. Those are required by traders. They're required by all of the infrastructure that goes into this becoming a mainstream investing product, which before it was a fringe product. It was a fringe investment. You can't just call your broker and say, buy me some Bitcoin. There's a few firms that, are dabbling in that, but very soon you're going to be able to.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, fast forwarding to you taking over and pretty much putting a lot of trust in yourself in the market, you pretty much took over 4 different revenue streams. You got Clue, you got Netcoins, you got Block Search, and obviously you bringing in Terra Zero. What were your initial thoughts of each, and what have you actually optimistically seen that you didn't know before? And obviously, we'll get into the cohesion and the possibilities in the future.
Okay.
But in terms of each company, what were your initial thoughts, and what have you actually seen that gives you optimism for them?
Yeah. Um, Netcoins runs an incredibly tight ship and a very well organized company, which I really like. So I've got no real comments on that. It will make money when crypto's doing well, and it will not make money, as much money, when crypto's not doing as well. That's just the nature of that business. I'm just going to get into the sort of the changes. So Netcoins as an exchange, we'll just deal with each company individually. So Netcoins as an exchange is a good exchange. Netcoins is licensed in Canada and in, I believe, 19 US states. And, we're working on that expansion as we speak. Netcoins can expand geographically, but it can also expand in a new channel, a new way to reach customers. And that's where TerraZero comes in. That's where TerraZero can help Netcoins be different from its competitors. I can't get into exact details, but you can read between the lines. So, so that's one way. Netcoins, I take Blockchain Intelligence Group and I say, okay, they've got this cool product Clue. It's used by a bunch of law enforcement agencies. They're onboarding a bunch more. It's great. It's an analytic tool. It's something that's required, to find things. But where's the real value in Blockchain Intelligence Group? The value is in the over 1 billion pieces of data. And this is proprietary data. I'm not talking about transactional data because everybody can see that on a blockchain. I'm talking about the 9 years of work, and we're talking a lot of work that has gone into labeling each transaction, each wallet, so that we know that this wallet is associated with the dark web, or this is a wallet that's owned by Coinbase, or what have you. This is a Hezbollah wallet, etc. This was involved in this scam. This was involved. Over 1 billion pieces of that data. What can we do with that data? That is what I
value with that. Yeah.
There's a huge value in that. And that's what's not being used. It's being used for Clue. Fine. That's only law enforcement that's using it. But what could AI do with that data? How can that data help other companies or other companies that are owned by BIGG have an edge on trading? How can we be progressive as opposed to responsive? So right now, we can see when money gets stolen or hacked or there's some human trafficking, we know exactly where that
you could follow it. Yeah.
We know exactly where it is. What if we were able to forecast when these events might occur based on history? And so it's taking that data and finding uses of that data. No other exchange that I know of owns this kind of data. No other, outside of Chainalysis and Elliptic, there's Blockchain Intelligence Group. But we're affiliated with a company that directly has customers that are looking for an edge when they're trading, which is Netcoins. We are directly working with law enforcement that is looking for an edge when it comes to forecasting trends and historical events that may repeat in the future based on how behaviors were in the past.
Stop it before it happens. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think the Blockchain Intelligence Group is, its value is in the data. Its value is not in its revenue streams today. Its value is in its data and what that data can translate to in terms of trading advantages, in terms of law enforcement and crime prevention, in terms of fraud prevention, in terms of these kinds of things. And that's where I'm working heavily with Lance, who obviously runs that. There'll be some significant announcements on Blockchain Intelligence Group in the coming months. But yeah, I'm excited about the data. Now, what other products can we launch that are useful? There are products that are just being beta tested right now that are based on the data that are geared towards a consumer. So why would we need to have consumers as customers as well? So there's all sorts of different things the Blockchain Intelligence Group has. TerraZero, I started when I left DMG for a specific reason, because when I was asked to look at this metaverse decentralized world, my kid was always on video games. They spent a fortune in these video games.
Roblox.
All this kind of stuff. And so I never really got it. But then when I started looking at the decentralized metaverse world, I realized that every building, every piece of land, every clothing, every avatar was an NFT. And I finally realized that it was all managed by a blockchain. And I finally realized, this is the actual use case of NFTs. And so, we started TerraZero. We built projects for Fidelity, Miller, Bacardi, Salesforce.com, Duolingo, PwC, big brands. And we were able to develop those relationships with them as we built in these decentralized worlds. Well, what they told us was what we built, as what we have been building since then. In other words, it didn't work. Decentraland is failing. Sandbox is failing, and they're failing for a few reasons. One is that they only accept crypto. That's the only form of payment in a decentralized metaverse world. Like we talked about at the beginning, only 3% of the world's population uses a crypto wallet. So why the hell is Estee Lauder trying to sell to 3% of people? And so that was one problem. The other problem was data and IP protection. You've got these big brands, they need to protect their IP. They need to protect their users' data. We couldn't do that in blockchain and decentralized worlds. So we built something called Introverse. And Introverse looks and feels exactly like a metaverse world, but it's built on a Web 2 backbone. In other words, you don't need a wallet to connect to it. We've integrated with Stripe, so it enables fiat currency payments, so you can pay with a Visa, MasterCard. And there's 3 products in Introverse. These products are very clearly Introverse Enterprise. Introverse Enterprise is the stuff we do with the big brands, but it's in our own bespoke environment. What's important about this, by the way, is there's no barrier to entry. With metaverse worlds, there's barriers to entry. You either have to buy these crazy goggles, which are ridiculous, or you have to have a gaming computer, or you have to connect a crypto wallet like MetaMask in order to participate. And, you don't create barriers to entry.
It's already difficult for people who find it as a difficult industry as it is.
Yeah, and so Introverse is literally a hyperlink. So we just did one with Teddy Swims and Warner Music. It's testing out something we call Introverse Pro. It's simply introverse.com/Teddy Swims. You can look at it on your mobile. You can look at it on your desktop. It's just a 3D version of today's internet is all it really is. You can listen to his music when you connect your Spotify. You can buy his concert tickets, all those kinds of things. So getting back to the 3 products at TerraZero, and you're going to see how Netcoins and Blockchain Intelligence Group are integral to the future of TerraZero, is as follows. There's Introverse Enterprise, which is all the customized stuff we do for the big brands. And, an example would be introverse.com/Warner Music and all the stuff that we do with Warner Music. But then there's Introverse Pro, and Introverse Pro is a product that's aimed at every single small business and medium business. It's aimed at every artist, musician, and content creator. And what it is basically $50 a month. We've built templates. So these are 3D environments. It looks like a video game. You choose your template. You can customize from thousands of different digital images to change the colors, the furniture, the pictures on the walls, all that kind of stuff. And then you can have your own e-commerce store there. You can have your music playing. And this is obviously what we're demoing and working with Warner and Atlantic Records on right now, is every single artist should have an Introverse page. Right now, every artist has a Twitter, they have a Facebook, they have their website. Why wouldn't they have an immersive version of that same website?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's Introverse Pro. Obviously, for the music industry, for small businesses, if you guys remember Wix, I don't know why I say remember, it's a very successful company right now. It means that any small business, whether you have any programming skills whatsoever, you go there, you choose a template, you add your Shopify, you customize your storefront, and now you've got an e-commerce business. Well, we're doing
It's
the
quick
same
and easy.
Introverse.
Yep.
You do the same thing. It takes you 10 minutes and you have your own little t-shirt store in the Introverse. Introverse.com, Dan's t-shirts. You add our payment module that we built with PwC and integrated Stripe into, and you now have a storefront that you can sell virtual goods or you can sell physical goods that come right to your door. And so this is an entirely new channel. And I want to make that very clear, is that, back in the 1980s, people had one way to sell a pair of shoes, and it was a store. The 90s gave us a second way, and Nike now could sell to us via e-commerce. Well, Introverse provides a third way for Nike to interact with its customers and sell them a pair of shoes, but not just a physical pair of shoes. They can also sell them a virtual pair of shoes that customer in the Introverse can then sell on the secondary market. And so you create this whole opportunity in the Introverse where people can buy and sell digital goods and services. The third product in the Introverse tech is Introverse Live. And this is where I get excited. So Introverse Live
Oh,
is
so you weren't
everybody.
excited before, because I'm getting excited from
No, it's
those
really
two
cool.
things.
This is really cool. And this is why, I get passionate about this stuff. But the Introverse Live is sometime in late Q1, I believe we'll be ready. Don't quote me on that because there's a lot that goes into this stuff. We've been building this for a while. We've been building this with the input from all of our clients, whether it be the big financial institutions we work with or the big record labels. But it's called Introverse Live, and it's going to allow every human to have their own free apartment. There's no value to the apartment. Right now, I have Facebook. I post my pictures, I message my buddies, I tell the world how great my vacation was. Well, in Q1, you're going to have introverse.com/Dan Reitzik. That will be my new form of social media. That is where I hang out. My friends can come visit me at my apartment. We can listen to Spotify together in my apartment, which I know this sounds crazy to my age group anyway. People listen to music together. They want to sing along to a song in the car, in their apartment, whatever. They can't do that in a virtual environment today. We all, over the last 3 years, everybody grew up. They're all staying at home now. They're not interacting as much. Well, now you can, because you can actually go to your buddy's place and listen to music. You'll be able to watch Netflix together in your buddy's Introverse apartment. And what's great about it, and where things get interesting, is you now have a new form of social media. In addition to what else we're building, you go to your apartment, it's your starting page in the Introverse. You customize it however you want. You'll be able to buy things like Miller Man Cave skins. So it's the NFL games. On Sunday, I want to have my buddies over to my Introverse apartment. We're going to watch the games together. Soon we'll be gambling on those games in the Introverse. Soon we'll be able to trade crypto 24/7 in the Introverse. Now we talked about NFTs and what use case they have. Well, the problem with NFTs is I'd go spend a bunch of money on a cool NFT from NBA Hot Shots or whatever it was, and what am I going to do with it? Put it in my wallet? I buy this art because I want people
tangible.
to see it.
Yeah.
I want people to see it. So my apartment now becomes where I display my NFTs that I may have bought because I like the album cover from Pearl Jam's album. That's a limited edition. And people can then buy and sell that NFT from their apartment wall. So you can sort of see how it all comes together. In terms of blockchain intelligence group, we need KYC tools. We need tools because on day one, yes, our brands are saying, please make it fiat. We want to be able to sell perfume and have people use a credit card to buy it. But in time,
that's where Netcoins can come in.
Exactly. And so the whole point is that I want to offer choice. It's not you're either a crypto company or you're a not crypto company. Why wouldn't you allow people to use whatever they want to pay for things? And so that's what we're building and why we're integrating Netcoins and blockchain intelligence group tools into TerraZero's Introverse.
Thank you so much. I think it's very informative and very important for the shareholders to kind of get what your thoughts are on each company and what each company can lead to and the cohesion of them. And like you said before, you can read between the lines on some of the things you said. And it's extremely, extremely exciting. Now going to a topic that might not be as exciting and as sexy as the numbers just came out, and raising capital and or need it, don't need it. What are your thoughts on the profitability of Netcoins at the moment? Because right now it does seem like we're in that uptake as it is, as said earlier, because of the ETF madness, and then halving is going to come up. But how long do you see us being able to ride that wave, and do we need to do any type of capital raising for that matter?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. And if I don't mean to be coy, it's difficult for me to talk about decisions that were made prior to me being on board. I can talk about forward looking what our plans are, but looking backwards can sometimes be challenging. But I'll address the cash position right now. I'll address how we make money and how we offset our costs and what we might do in the future. So first of all, as I said before, Netcoins at this time is cash flow positive. Netcoins has an interesting business, and it's an interesting business. I believe there's 96 Bitcoin that are owned by Netcoins, which ultimately is owned by BIGG. Those Bitcoin, are used. I'm just going to get these. Those are used specifically as the float. So when you buy a Bitcoin through your Netcoins account, you're buying it from BIGG Digital Assets. We are then replacing that the following day or the following evening with our providers for liquidity. So you do tie up quite a lot of cash in the float, and the higher the volumes, the more cash we need to make sure are in the float. But that's a good problem to have if your volumes are high. So there is plenty of cash. The company has, I'm going to say, around $13 or $14 million. Yes, a good portion of it is tied up in a Netcoins float, but it's owned by the company. And there are different ways to provide the same service to customers without tying up our own crypto. But I like that it's tied up because I want to keep crypto. I'm a huge believer in crypto in the coming years, especially in the short run. I think that I've seen this before. This played out twice before. And
you've gone through this cycle a couple times.
Yeah, and we see it. People get really excited, and then hopefully, the last time the things collapsed because you got a bunch of scammers like the FTX people, and you got to shake out the garbage every so often and let the good companies survive and flourish, which usually happens. But getting to the cash position, so TerraZero brought with it cash. We bring with it. We did $1.8 million. I believe that number's right, and I'll want to fact check that. But I believe we did $1.8 million in the first 4 months of 2023. And these are just service deals with companies like Fidelity or PwC or Bacardi, et cetera. We made a conscious decision when those companies said to us, hey, we love this new way of reaching and engaging with customers, but we don't like the Decentralands and the Sandboxes and the rest of them. If you could build the same thing, but with KYC, with AML, with data protection, with IP protection, with the ability for fiat payments, we would be all over this. So I turned around to the TerraZero team and I said, you know what? I want you to spend the next 9 months and build this tech stack. Build it exactly the way our customers have told us they want us to build this. So that's why we didn't have any revenue in the last quarter. Now, we have started picking up revenues again because now those big customers are testing the Introverse technology. And they're paying us while they do that. So you're going to see that come around again, which means TerraZero is going to start contributing again to the overall revenue side. Blockchain Intelligence Group, that's an interesting business. As I said before, I've beaten that one to death. But as I've said before, I don't believe that the value was in the products and services that were created. The value is in the data that's been assembled that no one else has in the entire world. This is 9 years of a lot of time, money, and resources to build this data set. And machine learning, AI, all that is a way to understand massive amounts of data and what they might mean and what meaningful information you can glean from that data. We have that data. So I'm really excited about what we can do with Blockchain Intelligence Group. I will say that we cut about 20% of our overhead pretty much the first day I got here. One thing that I like to do is I like to build synergies between companies. I like to build partnerships. I'm a big believer in a smaller piece of a much bigger pie. And it's worked well for me in the past. And I think, moving forward, it works well. We have synergies and economies of scale when you have 3 companies that are complementary. So it's very easy. And we did not miss a beat by cutting those expenses of around 20. I'm not done yet, probably another 10%. So that certainly helps. But there's no reason why you need to have multiple social media people for 3 companies that have ultimately the same goal. There's no reason you need to have multiple law firms. There's no reason you need to have all these accountants. So the general point is to bring those companies together. In fact, one of the first things that we did when I took over was we had a town hall. The employees at Netcoins had not really met the employees at Blockchain Intelligence Group, and they hadn't actually met anyone at TerraZero. Well, these are some really smart people. And these are people from diverse backgrounds. These are people that have been working in this space for a long time. They bring different things to the table. We had a town hall and we spoke about everything we spoke about what each of the companies did. And then we opened it up for ideas and thoughts. And now they're all communicating with each other. The security guys are talking to each other from Netcoins and Blockchain Intelligence Group. The artists and creative people from TerraZero are talking to the Netcoins marketing people saying, hey, if you guys could do this, this would be really cool. So it's bringing that company together that allows us to come up with new ideas. In fact, the whole NFT on the wall thing came from an employee during that conversation. I didn't even think about that. I thought that your apartment, you'd be displaying pictures of your vacation in Spain like you would on Facebook, and you will. But there's also the opportunity to display that NFT that's been hidden in your wallet for 3 years because you want to show off that you, in fact, do have that NFT. And then it became this whole, hold on a second, people could buy and sell from each other inside their apartment. So that all came because one of the engineers, I think it was a blockchain intelligence group, started talking to the TerraZero guys and saying, could you do this? And we have the technology to be able to track that NFT. And so just fostering that creative environment, I think, is really important.
And I think you coming in was a perfect time, because when it's the same people and it's the same routine and it's mundane and everything is the same, when you bring in new eyes from the outside, they're able to come up with these creative ideas. Hey, let's synergize the companies together and see how we can, put them together, and how the creativity team of TerraZero can add some creativity to blockchain intelligence, and so far and so forth. So I commend you for definitely thinking and doing that, because a lot of people would have just walked in and said, okay, well, this is how it's running. We'll trim some fat and we'll continue as usual. But you came in and you said, hey, there's a fundamental issue here. This company owns 4 different revenue streams, but each revenue stream doesn't know what the other revenue stream is doing.
And they're all complementary.
Yeah, and I applaud you, for doing that. So that brings us to our last question for myself. What can we expect going forward in terms of maybe new ideas or new things that not necessarily you can not talk about, but things that maybe outline the plans you kind of have in mind?
Okay, so first and foremost, I'm excited. I'm excited about what we're building here. And I want to address something else that you were just talking about. You were talking about how the people that work for these companies, it's the same old, same old. It's been, they're doing the same things. They're not getting as creative as they could be, and they're not as excited as they could be. It's the same thing with our shareholder base. Our shareholder base, honestly, is quite bored, I think. From the people that I've spoken to.
And concerned, right? And concerned because it is boring, right?
It's a bit boring. And so, adding that use cases for things like, okay, so we talked about, so I'll get into the differentiating stuff. So Netcoins products that are coming out, I can't tell you what products, but I can tell you that the main goal of what Fraser and myself and some of the other members are working on is how do we differentiate this exchange from the other 10 exchanges that you can deal with in Canada and some of the United States. We can do things with new products and services not available to those other exchanges. We can do that through new channels that make it a little bit more fun and exciting and immersive when you're trading. So those are the kinds of things you're going to see with Netcoins, is not just geographical expansion, but entirely new channel expansion, if that makes sense. With Blockchain Intelligence Group, there's a couple of products that are coming out that are geared towards consumers. And this is, instead of it just being a company that markets and sells to law enforcement and can never really talk about its clients, because quite frankly, you either call Blockchain Intelligence Group because you lost a bunch of money, or you were scammed, or you were extorted, or your law enforcement, none of which are allowing us to say we just did this deal.
All privacy protected, yeah.
Exactly. So we want consumer-driven products. We want people to understand that that same data that is relevant to law enforcement is also data that is relevant to consumers for trading, that is relevant to consumers for conducting a transaction with someone that you may not know. There's all sorts of consumer products that we'll be launching from Blockchain Intelligence Group. And then TerraZero brings the excitement. TerraZero brings the apartments, it brings the big brands, it brings the BB Rexes, the Snoop Dogs, and the rest of them that then have a use case for Netcoins. Your apartment, by the way, is a walled garden. There is no other company that can advertise within that experience in the introverse than our own companies. And I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I'm excited about where we're going.
Amazing, amazing. So I do. We're coming up almost to an hour. I know you have a busy day, and I just want to leave it off with some key points that I really wanted to fundamentally say again. Other than my appreciation, obviously, for you joining us and giving the Big Fam the ability. As you know, we're a group of diehard investors who, we could be pushy and we could be sad and mean and boring as well sometimes, but we only want the best, obviously. Yeah, people are commenting in the Discord, the amount of uses of excitement from yourself and the amount of smiling that I've been doing. So thank you for giving me that excitement as well. So I do want to stress, we are a good cash flow. No raises are needed. Expect a lot of cohesion between the companies, which you've already done. We have cut some expenses, about 20% thus far, 10% in the future. And yeah,
Increasing the revenues. So you can either cut your way out of issues, or you can raise your way out of issues. In other words, you raise capital, or you increase your revenues to offset those expenses. I'm choosing to increase our revenues. And that is not as challenging as people might think. It's about where do you direct the resources. Like I said before, Terra Zero can do millions and millions and millions of dollars in custom activations for our big clients. I chose not to because we have plenty of money on our books, and I wanted to launch our proprietary product, the Introverse, much sooner rather than later. But we can change that. If the markets indicate a good time to either raise capital or to do any type of M&A activity, that is all on the table. I mean, what you're going to see now is it gets exciting. This is where it gets fun, and business should be fun. That's where people miss out, is they think business should be boring and all about accounting and all about contracts. And it doesn't have to be. And you can see that in the Introverse stuff that we do with big brands, is they make it fun. Fidelity International, believe it or not, was a fun experience. And Fidelity International is not known as an exciting company. But it was a fun experience that we created for them. And I think it was called The Lessons of Life or something. And people would go in there and learn about saving and what it meant to save this amount of money over this amount of time and all sorts of fun stuff, but in a gamified manner. And that's kind of what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, the company has enough cash to go where it needs to go. And, from my history, I don't raise money at low prices. It's something that you don't ever want to do. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to raise capital because you might want to acquire another company that could add significant benefits to our company, whether that's other exchanges, whether that's other technologies, I don't know. But when I raised money at DMG, it was at $3. And so, that's kind of historically where I think that the shareholders are happy with raising money at a premium, as opposed to raising money because you have to raise money.
Also, one question that just slipped into my mind that we were hammering with the prior management: are there any thoughts of uplisting? And is there any strategic reason for doing it? The answer we always got before was, well, we'll do it when the market heats up, because there's no point doing it now because, people aren't going to buy the share, and, it does cost money to do these things. But now that we're slowly going into the ETF run and we're going into the whole halving, is this something that maybe you look at again?
Absolutely. Exposure is just like when you're selling a product to a limited audience. It's the same as when you're on a smaller exchange. You're only able to sell your product, which happens to be your equity, to people that have the ability to be exposed to it and have the ability to buy it. So moving into different exchanges and larger exchanges opens up a new world of investors, some of these large funds, for example, that you want to have a position in your company. And so, I can't make any promises, but I can tell you that, yeah, absolutely, of course, one of the first things that I've been doing is talking with different exchanges about, procedures and things like that. When I was at DMG, we actually did go down that route. We were TSX Venture. Moving to the big board on TSX is not actually that challenging. Um, there are extra costs. You do get extra exposure, but I did like the idea in the US, uplisting in the US, especially because there's a certain cachet to that. There's also certain requirements. So we need to get. I wouldn't want to expose the company until the company's plans are cemented over the coming few months, and everybody knows exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it'll be successful. I don't want to have that extra exposure. So yeah, it does take a few months. One of my original founders, by the way, at DMG and a founder at Terra Zero, and is obviously a big part of this, is a securities lawyer. So we have that as a founder and as a partner, full time, putting this all together, because there's a lot that goes into something like this. But yeah, anytime you can sell to more people, you're going to do that in business. Whether that means I'm going to have just an internet site to sell my shoes, or I'm going to have an internet and an introverse site to sell my shoes, I would obviously take both, right?
Absolutely. So, Dan, thank you so much again from the bottom of my heart and from the many, many people listening and the many people who are watching on Discord. We thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you for everything you do, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it from the people who invest who can't afford to hold, and that's half of the more than half people in the world. But I will say that Mr. Dan Reitzik, we appreciate you, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for giving us the ability to talk to you on this level, on this
Yeah,
platform.
no worries. And thank you, by the way. Real pleasure having this chat. And something else that's important, by the way, is as you build out something like the Introverse and you have consumers onboarding onto that, your easiest customers for both your stock, but also whatever you're selling on behalf of your clients, are your own installed customer base. So all of these users become shareholders. All of these users have the ability to become users of our different companies. So I'll leave it at that. Let's do this in a month or two, and I'll have a lot more
Thank
I'm
you
going to
so
be able to
much.
say. Yeah,
Thank you so
great
much.
stuff.
Appreciate you, and keep grinding. We appreciate
Yeah,
it.
have a great weekend, buddy.